has to be said, Remnant from the Ashes is a better game than it deserves to be. It's nigh on the epitome of a high concept pitch. What about Dark Souls? With guns! There is little here that's original, but developer Gunfire Games have put things together in a very satisfying way. The sense of vulnerability, lack of health regeneration and limited ammo all leave you feeling small. Add to that the well-considered audio, hearing enemies you cannot see, a couple of musical notes played when a mini-boss comes into play, and the beginning of the game feels more survival than shooter. Early game, things can be quite tough. Lacking gear, abilities and passive traits, you'll likely be scrambling for upgrade materials in preparation for being pasted by one of the bosses, or the mini-bosses, or just the regular mobs to be honest. But it does change. You learn how to deal with enemies, you get a selection of gear, you upgrade. You can never take survival for granted, but there does come a point where you can go forth confidently, at which point the overall satisfaction of the game as a shooter becomes apparent. You survive, and you feel rewarded for doing so. World building takes a leaf from Diablo's handbook. Progression through the game is linear, but the areas themselves are randomly generated, with a lucky dip selection of side dungeons to explore. Some gear is dungeon specific, so re-rolling the game and hoping can be required if you just want that one missing armour set. The recently added adventure mode helps with this, though as there is a very finite amount of gear to collect, this might be a mixed blessing. Of course, the other way to explore different layouts is to join a multiplayer game. Multiplayer is probably where you will see the best and the worst of the game though. Some of the more winding enemy dense areas can carry a good feeling of needing to cover each other, and the boss fights tend to be pretty chaotic thanks to ads keeping everyone busy. That said, what feels like a push for survival in single player begins to feel a far easier experience with company. It is effectively drop in, drop out. You can go acquiring items and experience before returning to your own unprogressed campaign that bit stronger. There were issues with this at launch, where the game would balance itself to the strongest player and leave the team to suffer. Thankfully some balancing has occurred here already. There are some points that could do with more refinement. Trying to maintain more than one loadout makes you realise how much the gear mod system could be refined, for probably the most egregious example. Some of the NPCs also feel rather flat. The ones you encounter in the world, and the home base you go to for upgrades, Ward 13, which feels very underdeveloped and underused. However, probably the harshest description you could give these flaws is unpolished. Ultimately, Remnant's an enjoyable game. It's one that's hard to spot anything truly original, but it all fits together well. It's a rare thing these days, a game with a satisfying gameplay loop, where having seen everything there's still satisfaction going back and playing through again.